Hello everybody. Today's video is going to be dealing with Cenk Uygur, Bernie Sanders, the Young Turks, and the Armenian Genocide. Now, as many of you may have heard, Cenk Uygur has retracted his statements, meaning his articles from his youth, about the Armenian Genocide. But this isn't good enough. This means very, very little. First of all, two things can be said about this. One, when he actually issued this statement, it was not in a video format, it was not on his main YouTube channel, and he himself wasn't the one to tweet it out or let the public know. In fact, he had his Anna Kasparian go out there and, tweet his whole article, his new article. It wasn't really an article, it was a very, very short statement, basically retracting his previous statements and saying that he wasn't going to be talking about this topic anymore. What a brave and apologetic man he is. How merciful, right? He is so kind-hearted, so glorious, that he is retracting his previous statements. How kind and courageous of him to do this for the Armenian community that he cares so much about, right? So this statement wasn't made that publicly, and it wasn't put out there by him. So that's the first issue I take with this statement. The second issue I take with his statement is that he didn't really make a statement. He simply said, "I retract everything I've said before, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to take a new position now, so stop asking me about it." If you want the full unedited version, go try to find it. I mean, if you can find it, it's a little bit hard to. Basically, he said nothing. He has yet to acknowledge that the Armenian Genocide did happen. The Young Turks committed it against the Armenian people. I would also add that his entire news organization is named after the group that committed the genocide. It is the equivalent to having a group, a news organization, named the Third Reich. That is equivalent. Now, with all of that being said, I said I was going to talk about Bernie Sanders, so let's go a little bit into Bernie Sanders. One of the things that's been happening throughout this campaign is one of the discussions that we've been having as a society is what is and what is not acceptable behavior of a presidential candidate. When David Duke came out and supported Donald Trump, many were very upset that Donald Trump did not immediately denounce David Duke's support of him. David Duke, as many of us know, is a former KKK member. Now, anyone who's not living under a rock knows that the KKK is a very racist organization. You want nothing to do with the KKK if you're a reasonable and decent human being. So people were very upset that Donald Trump did not denounce the support that he was now getting from former KKK member David Duke. Reasonably so. We should expect people who want to be the leader of this nation to denounce people who hold extremely bigoted and actually racist positions. That is something we don't want to see from a presidential candidate. Genuine racism, genuine bigotry is bad. I don't even think I really need to say that because that's me not being fair to my audience, because I think my audience is more intelligent than me having to tell them that racism is bad. I mean, we all know racism is bad. We don't want our president to be endorsed by racist people, and he shouldn't accept their endorsement. Now, what does this have to do with Cenk Uygur and Bernie Sanders? If a white supremacist who denies the Holocaust of the Jews, were to come out in support of Donald Trump, as we've already seen, I'm not sure if David Duke is a Holocaust denier, but I know he doesn't exactly have a favorable opinion of the Jews. We have already seen that when a presidential candidate is endorsed by such people, that people, reasonably so, get angry about that and expect the presidential candidate to denounce those individuals. Bernie Sanders has taken the exact opposite route. Bernie Sanders is now not only accepting, but praising his endorser, Cenk Uygur. He is praising him, thanking him for all the good work he does. Might I remind everyone that this man denies that Turkey committed a genocide against the Armenian people where they slaughtered 1.5 million people because they were Armenian. What happened to the Armenian people was disgusting. It was a genocide, and you can't say it was anything else. It was a genocide, pure and simple. Now, Cenk Uygur may have retracted his statements, but to say I don't know enough, to plead the fifth, to plead ignorance, oh, I'm not a historian, therefore I can't comment on it. Well, you weren't afraid to make comments in the past, but suddenly now that you're being called out for what you said in the past, you're still refusing to actually acknowledge the science behind it, the genuine, the factual history of what happened to the Armenian people, and you expect us to accept that, to think that's good enough. And Bernie Sanders, I am ashamed of what you're doing. I mean, first of all, I don't endorse you regardless of whether Cenk Uygur or not endorses you. But knowing the history of the Jewish people, our own people, knowing that you accept the endorsement from a man who denies the genocide of another people? The Armenian people were killed for being Armenian. They had a beautiful culture, they had good education, and they had great values, and they were slaughtered. Because they were different. Because they were the other. And from a man whose family who many died and suffered during the Jewish genocide. For you to be so ignorant of what the Armenian people have experienced, for you to accept his endorsement is wrong on so many levels for any politician, but especially for one who comes from that background, who should have a little more empathy because of that background. The very name of the man who is endorsing you, not his personal name, but the name of his news organization, is the group that committed the genocide. Why is this acceptable? For anyone who thinks this isn't a big deal, that I'm nitpicking, that I'm just trying to tarnish Bernie Sanders in any way because I have a hidden political agenda, I ask you, if a white supremacist who denies the Jewish genocide, who denies the Holocaust, were to endorse a presidential candidate, wouldn't we expect that presidential candidate not to accept his endorsement, but to denounce that man for his denial, for his bigotry? Because to deny a genocide against a people, you are throwing salt into their wounds. Genocide is a wound against all of humanity, and to deny it is to ensure that the wound never heals. Cenk Uygur, his denial, it shows a certain callousness towards the Armenian people. It shows he doesn't actually care about healing them, about uplifting them, about recognizing what was done. It is an insult to the greatest level for someone, not once again, Cenk Uygur, I don't hold the people who are descendant from a group of people that did something, I don't hold them accountable for what their ancestors did. That would be ridiculous. We should be judged as individuals, of course. But to deny it, to actively deny it, and then plead ignorance, it's not good enough. Bernie Sanders should not be accepting your endorsement. You should not be able to call yourselves progressives, because it's very regressive of you to deny a genocide of a people. It is anti-science, anti-history, and it is anti-people. The Armenian people. You are against the Armenian people. You are against them by throwing salt into their wounds. You are not supporting them. You are not helping them. You are hurting them. And a better man would put aside his loyalty to the nation that he was born to. A better man would put that aside, his bias, his personal bias, and look at the facts. It is our own historical record in America that shows that the genocide did happen. We have letters back and forth describing the atrocities that were being committed against the Armenian people. And we haven't done our fair share either. We haven't worked towards recognizing the genocide, partly because of our position with Turkey that we have to be wary of. But I'm here, I recognize the genocide as an individual. I recognize that it happened because our historical record says so. Bernie, As someone who claims themselves to be a progressive, claims himself to stand for all human rights, you are accepting the endorsement of a man who denies the fact that the Turkish government committed a horrible genocide against another group of people, violated their human rights. Yet you allow for this man to endorse you, and you praise him for that endorsement. We would never tolerate a Holocaust denier. So why tolerate a Holocaust denier who denies the Holocaust of the Armenian people? Why would we tolerate that? There seems to be a double standard against the Armenian people, and I don't like it, and I don't think anyone else should accept it. It is unacceptable. And if anyone, CNN, any news organization, if you see this, understand that this should not be allowed by the greater society. I think it is time that we say enough is enough. That if we won't accept a Holocaust denier, we will not accept an Armenian genocide denier. This man does not deserve credibility. This should be known by every news organization, and anytime his name comes up, this should come up too. Because this is unacceptable. I think it should be known to everyone that Bernie Sanders accepts the endorsement of a genocide denier and praises that genocide denier and his organization that is named after the group that committed the genocide. That should be public information, and it should be spread and disseminated as much as possible, because that's the truth. And it is not acceptable.